Hi there, today on Lydia's Books I want to talk about the books coming out in June of 2026. Now, of course, you might be wondering, hey, where are the books for July? Well, they're coming up because I missed a month. And instead of cramming them all together and talking for an hour, I thought I'd do 2 separate videos like nature intended and do that. And then at the end of this video, I'll explain my absence over the last month if you haven't already followed me on social media and discerned all that for yourself. Or in the posts here, I did have a little post in YouTube. But hey, without further ado, there are some really cool books coming out in June 2026. And I'll try and keep it in the past tense as if I made this video on time for whatever reason. No real reason. And yeah, I only found 12 books that really hit the button for me. And as you know, if you've, watched these videos before, if you've not, then welcome to my channel. I do talk about what's coming out in horror that really speaks to me as a horror fan level. I don't typically cover like thrillers and such, just dyed-in-the-wool horror and someone that's doing something new in horror or with a new twist on a trope. Those are my favorite things. But the number one favorite thing are the freaking cool covers. And we have no shortage of that. We start out on June 1st with Grief Eater by Emma Osborne. And I love this cover because it's got this very high key graphic nature, but with low key colors. We have like a blood red and the black at the background, big white text, big bold sans serif white text, one of my favorite things, and a weird green zombie colored face of a woman in anguish. And yeah, I really like this cover. It's very plain, but very striking. When Christina rises from her violent death, she's not the same fragile woman her family once abandoned. She's rageful, powerful, and hungry for the blood of the ones who are supposed to love her. With a newfound craving to see vengeance and grief served, she launches into a once-in-an-undead lifetime journey across blood-slicked highways to the scorched Australian bush of her hometown. As her body fails and her mind fractures, she's left with one final question. Is she here to forgive or to feed? And hey, I love a small town horror. A small town zombie horror, my favorite. 0-day stuff in a small town's really my favorite, but a revenge story of a zombie kind of 0-day coming of age, coming of undead, really cool premise. So yeah, very interesting, Grief Eater. Now here we are with a very different cover, kind of low-key colors, with a high-key text, more sans serif, but all lowercase, as opposed to the previous one that was all uppercase, all lowercase. Backstabbers by Eliza Jabore. And this looks really interesting to me because I can't really discern what's going on in the cover, but it's very font forward with sort of like, I don't know, Futura in lowercase black weight font, like something very cool in a hot pink. I really hope hot pink is not the new color. It's my least favorite color in the entire planet. But yes, Jade, Steph, and Zoe are hiking Washington State's Bones Hollow Trail, braving cougars, black bears, and storms that roll in without warning, like we had one last night. Tornadoes everywhere. Their anxiety isn't helped by listening to a true crime podcast about a serial killer who once prowled the same forest. Okay. When Steph twists her ankle badly, there's no one to hear them scream for help. The only sign for life for Miles is a cabin that looks like it's straight out of a horror movie, occupied by a man who's all too eager to invite them in. Of course he is. As things take a chilling turn, the friends must find a way to stay alive together. After all, who can you trust when your back's against the wall? Unfortunately for them, the only thing more twisted than this nightmare is their friendship. And Steph's ankle, I guess. I listened to a terrible podcast about the Greyhound bus decapitation while I was on a Greyhound bus at night. It was jarring, but I think that's part of it, right? You read these scary stories during storms in the night at the dark, and you listen to podcasts in settings that have some verisimilitude to the story you're reading or listening to. I think that is just heightening the atmosphere, is it not? Maybe it's wrong. Maybe you shouldn't do that. I don't know. I love the cover of this book, and I have seen it get quite a bit of buzz. On June 2nd now, we have Melissa Albert, The Children. And at first I was like, meh, because it has buzz and I'm such a hipster, I thought, well, it can't be any good. But then I read this synopsis and I was like, yeah, okay, I'm pretty interested in this myself. Guinevere Sharp has two childhoods. In one, she and her brother Ennis live in a wooded shadow of their family's isolated Vermont farmhouse. In the other, the pages of her mother's world-famous Ninth City books, where their magical adventures have made them household names. In reality, she and Ennis are growing up near feral, unwashed and underfed, escaping each day to the wild woods they've made their playland. As Edith Sharp's books explode into epic popularity, the threats of rural childhood give way to escalating perils of fame, until the night it all goes up in flames, leaving Edith's stories unfinished and her children the sole survivors. Good for them. Now, an adult coasting on her mother's name, Guinevere is mid-promotion for a ghost-written memoir when her estranged brother, an artist who has until now spurned the family's legacy, announces an upcoming installation entitled simply Mother. As rumors swirl around a death connected to his last show, unsettling recollections from Guinevere's childhood begin to surface. I grew up in an area where there was like a family. Their mother was a famous cartoonist, and the kids, seemed to be pretty well adjusted. And I just like superimpose this terrible story on them. Unfortunately, it's not very fair to do that to those kids that I went to school with. But yeah, that would be the sort of story that would be super cool if one of them had written this book. But yeah, the children, I love the cover. I didn't really explain the cover too much, but it's got sort of a storybook gilt gold brass looking font in mostly sans serif. The children is letter forms that look sort of like a hammered brass lettering with a crescent moon and a house in the woods featured on the cover. Their Vermont estate, I suppose. So yeah, it's all on red, so it looks very Victorian. It looks very classic. It looks like a children's story. So yeah, this fairy tale has come to an abrupt end in that scary house on the cover. I do like the way that all of this marries together with a really compelling story. And it's a story about a writer, which is always my favorite. Coming up on June 9th is Headlights by CJ Leede, and I really liked this synopsis as well. It sounds a little bit more like a procedural or a thriller, but it could be more horrific than meets the eye. The cover has something, it's a photo collage of a wolf head mouth biting a hand that feeds or something like that, with what looks like a comet falling straight down into the woods, and sans serif all cap letters spelling out the title Headlights in bright yellow. This bright yellow text just keeps coming back. I really like it. Special Agent Daniel Stansfield is ready for a change. Burnt out and defeated by the job, it's his last day with the FBI. But before he can turn in his badge, he's summoned back to Denver, the city he ran 4 years ago, with a chilling message: it's happening again. Seemingly innocent people are waking up on the side of the highway with no memory of how they got there, wearing the skin of victims they've allegedly never met. And they each share one haunting detail: a strand of the stranger's hair tied around their tongue. Now Daniel will have to confront the ghosts of his traumatic childhood and face what's been haunting him all along, before he and the people he loves become the next victims. I do like the idea there. Now we're getting into sort of like a Scandi noir kind of thing with that. That's what it feels like to me. And I'm very interested on how they get the hair around the tongue to stay, right? Once they wake up. If there was a hair tied around my tongue, that's all I would worry about. The skin of other people on me, not so much. Also on June 9th, we have a gorgeous monotone cover of It Came from Neverland by Cynthia Pelayo. And I remember her mentioning this story on a podcast or something. It sounded so cool. And yeah, if you like fairy tales, and not like retold different takes on the idea of a fairy tale like in The Children, if you want a continuation of a fairy tale brought into the horror realm, I think this will tickle your fancy. So yes, Cynthia Pelayo. It's got this what looks kind of like a dollhouse or anyone's house with a white sheet blowing in the breeze. It's all in green monotone, so green on green, and it's sort of like a ivy and lime green together. The text is a nice all-cap serif font that says It Came from Neverland 1914. Wendy Darling works by day as a schoolteacher, and by night she assists soldiers who have returned home from the Western Front. There's one mysterious patient who, despite all the care they've given him, is in a deep sleep, unable to wake up. One night he murmurs the words, Peter Pan. Wendy is thrown back into a darker time, one that she wishes she could forget. When one of her students goes missing, it brings back memories of when children went missing and found murdered in London many years ago. Wendy is convinced that Peter Pan, the entity that she believes killed those children, is back. A sinister Peter Pan? Okay, I get it. He was pretty creepy, pretty sinister. I mean, who nails their shadow to the floor? I mean, come on. Also on June 9th, we have The Way It Haunted Him by Laura R. Samotin. And I like this cover. It's a little busy. It's a little weird. And speaking of like classic covers, like The Children, where it looks like a Victorian throwback to a certain extent, this has some interesting filigree edges on it. So it reminds me of like old wallpaper or like an old frontispiece to a book. It's got what looks like a little winged demon hanging on to a fountain pen, a red fountain pen. It's very strange. And a gold chain looping amongst all of that. It has white text on the front in sort of an old world typeface, like a black letter typeface. Some things that I really like in a cover. I'm not really sure what's going on though, but hey, we'll find out. Michael Stein arrives at the Schechter Institute for Judaic Studies, battered and broken, blaming himself for the tragic accident that took his boyfriend's life. He is haunted by his guilt and grief, but is determined to repent by completing his boyfriend's research into demonic entities. But instead of being welcomed by the archivist, Michael is met by Jacob Schechter, the archivist's enigmatic, brooding grandson who has inherited the institute after his grandfather's death. As Michael explores the archive, delving into cryptic texts and whispered histories, shadows from the past begin to seep into the present. Tormented by demons, both real and imagined, Tormented by demons, real and imagined, Michael's grief warps into something far darker, an intoxicating yet increasingly toxic obsession with Jacob, whose own secrets threaten to destroy them both. This sounds tantalizing. The cover is very strange. Like, I get they're in an archive and there's like Judaic studies, so it's going to probably be a lot of old manuscripts that were written with a fountain pen. I don't know if he's actually using one and why the demon's wrapped around it. I kind of get why the demon's wrapped around it so sexily now, though, but hey, interesting stuff. This sounds really fun. And this sounds even more fun. There's a couple books here that are very summer. If you're like, this is all very well and good, retold fairy tales, new fairy tales, perhaps, and, going into old archives, kind of like a dark academia versus horror thing going on, fun. Where's my summer camp slashers? Well, here's one and another to come. Summer Fun Massacre by Craig DiLouie. The cover, of course, has a big wooden summer camp sign. Summer Fun Massacre. Summer Fun is written in yellow paint on the sign with a big ring of pine trees, and Massacre is a crazy bloodied slasher font. It looks really cool. And of course there's like a cabin on the cover, because it wouldn't be horror without a house on the cover, right? It's 1992, and in the heat of Texas, Camp Summer Fun rests by a crystalline lake surrounded by shady forest. The counselors have set out the kayaks, prepped the kitchens, and refurbished the cabins. Now, on the night before camp begins, a bonfire and teenage counselors' rites of passage await. But the camp has a horrifying history. In the 80s, there was a massacre that left one sole survivor, one final girl, the killer never caught. That's my favorite. Deputy Tom Bailey is always on edge this time of year. There are rumors that the woods are haunted, that the killer might one day return. They're doomed. They have a death curse. Tom has deeply personal ties to the 80s massacre, and those ties have plagued his dreams. Okay, so very Camp Death, very Camp Crystal Lake. Aren't they all just a little? I love a story like this so much. And I also love that this is the perfect time for that sort of book, right? So it's perfect timing, the beginning of summer, just before the first day of summer, this book came out. So yeah, absolutely perfect timing for Camp Summer Fun. Now we go into something a little darker. On June 16th, we have Vervain Hollow by Catriona Silvey. And I've never heard of this author, but I really love the design of this book so very much. It's a black background with white text, and it is like a micro serif text in a small cap. very stark white, very bold text. I really like that. The picture is sort of like an overlay, a mask, not a mask like a mask you wear, but a mask like in Photoshop or in photography. It is like a cutout of a woman, maybe running, not really sure. But behind that is a watercolor of what looks like an old French chateau. Very interesting, very, very interesting. Not really sure what's going on, but I love the colors. I love this play of the black and the white over this muted pastel ochre, sort of like a weird yellow and brown kind of color going on with russet and ochre. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. 2 years ago, Laura was in a cult. But when the sprawling house in the hollow burned down with Vervain, their strikingly handsome and magnetic leader, trapped inside, Laura had nowhere to go but home. Broken-hearted, she finds herself longing for their lost leader. Despite the trauma of that strange and terrifying year, she knows the power he promised her was real. But when her estranged friend, Eliza, calls to tell her that Daniel, one of the other acolytes, has been lured back into the hollow by a message from Vervain, Laura only hears one thing: he's still there. As Laura and Eliza venture back to the house of their nightmares to find the truth, Laura soon realizes that not everything she remembers can be trusted, and that the darkness will do anything to get her back. So yes, cult horror. Who doesn't like a little cult horror? I mean, really. If you're like, no, I don't like cult horror, I want summer slashers. Okay, here's one. It's called Slasher Summer by E.L. Chen. And this is another Canadian author. Both Craig DiLouie and E.L. Chen are Canadian, which I think is really cool that we are embracing our woodland. And I will also talk about my new short story that's coming out, which also embraces our woodland. But yes, the cover of this is kind of a very interesting B-movie looking cover. I really hope this gets made into a movie. It's got the floating heads of our teenage cast around it. It looks like oil pastel. It looks really cool. Got this hooded killer wielding an axe over a cabin in the woods. I think it looks so neat. It uses all those really cool colors that you remember from back then, oil pastel or oil painting covers that adorned VHS. And it actually has a VHS border around it. This is VCR at the top, not quite VHS, but it is kind of distressed and old looking, vintage looking, and I like that look very much. I could almost do, who's going to do a stack of books that are all just VHS covers, like pretend VHS covers? I love it. So yes, this came out June 23rd. The sleepy town of Cedar Lake is best known for the shooting location of the campy's 80 horror flick Slasher. In high school, preppy Patrick, jock Jason, cheerleader Tiffany, stoner Freddie, goth Jennifer, and nerdy Mikey had played the cast of Slasher during midnight showings, with Virginal Carey as the final girl, of course. Years later, the friends reunite at a remote cabin where Slasher was filmed. They've changed since high school, and they're looking forward to a weekend to catch up. But when night falls and the eponymous masked killer is spotted, the reunion takes a deadly turn. The friends discover their ties deflated and the phone line disconnected, and soon they're being stalked by a mysterious assailant. Is someone trying to make their slasher experience as authentic as possible? One thing is for sure, before the night is over, they each will have to take on the role that they thought that they had left behind. I really love these stories that revolve around horror film very much, like Camp Con, I think it's called, by Adam Caesar. We have a horror movie by Paul Tremblay. I'm reading The October Film Haunt by Michael Weehunt. It's a book I keep meaning to get to. So this is like a long tradition of something I love, you know. And when it comes to horror, a lot of the time when we want a comfort food, or not a popcorn movie necessarily, but something that we know we're going to love, we turn to those tropes, those sorts of books that we've read over and over. Like, I could read a million haunted houses, but if you have haunted houses that have like a lone person who's a writer in it, then wow, I'm sold. Camp Slasher that has to do with a horror film, very happy. Very, very happy. So looking forward to that. And as mentioned, my short story, Only So Far in the Woods, is now available for pre-order on Amazon. So I'll have a link down below, and I will do a more dedicated video talking about how I got here with this particular short story and why it's not being traditionally published. But yeah, it is available as a Kindle ebook. It will be soon in paperback, probably in August. But for now, the pre-order is up. It comes out July 21st. June 23rd, we have a novel called Tillinghast coming out. Clare Cavenagh is the author, and I like the font. It is I don't know how to describe this sort of sans serif artistic font. It's a display font. A lot of the times they are not very easily categorized, but it's red text on the top, and it's got its own field at the top, like a creamish white colored block, so that the title is very separate. The image is of a woman covering her face, and it's portrayed upside down in black and white on a stark red, blood red background. Very plain, very interesting looking. It takes you a second to understand what's going on there. I'd probably have to look at it a couple times in a couple directions to really get it, but it's an upside down girl. Stutley Tillinghast lives a solitary life, ostensibly as the minister of a remote rural parish in Rhode Island. For many decades now, what little human contact he's allowed himself has been brief, frenzied, and bloody. Ooh. And he's always ended in the shallow grave of his cellar. There's a name for what he is, but he prefers not to use it. It is simple enough that he has needs, and when they become unbearable, he fulfills them. In his long and lonely life, he has met only one other like him, a woman he still yearns for, the one who has made him what he is. Then a girl arrives searching for him. She has his last name and bears an uncanny resemblance to that woman, awakening memories Tillinghast had long suppressed. The connection he feels for her is immediate and overwhelming. She's also sick, very sick, with symptoms Tillinghast recognizes all too well, and he does know how to cure her. Inspired by real events of the New England vampire panic of the 19th century, yes, yes, vampire stories. There are a few here and there coming out in the future alongside this one. This sounds really, 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 really good. And, you know, Mina's Child was another book about what happens after the whole big vampire story. Like, we would want to hear the story, the preamble about how Tillinghast met this woman and all that stuff. Maybe it's in the book, but I'm very, very interested in what happens next with this girl. 2 more books left. We have Bad Things Happen Here by Mark Morris, coming out June 30th. And the cover is like a black and white picture at a Dutch tilt of a smashed in like convenience store door, or like a school front door, crash door, or something like that. It is very kind of scary looking. It's that Dutch tilt and the smashed things with slanted text in white, a distressed white sans serif that says Bad Things Happen Here, and the author's name in red. I think it's a very striking, attention-getting cover. It only sort of describes, because any bad thing could have happened there, right? In 2004, a group of 6 students encounter supernatural forces centered around the 5th floor student residence. So insidious and terrifying is their ordeal that one of the 6 commits suicide, an act which drives an irreparable wedge between the rest. 20 years later, the remaining 5 friends are all living very different lives. Some harbor secrets, all are struggling. Although the 5 friends have not been in contact for almost 2 decades, they are drawn back together when their lives begin to fall apart. What happened to them 20 years ago seems to be seeping back into the present, affecting not just them this time, but their children, their partners, and their loved ones. As the terrifying visions, the violence, and the madness escalate, they must mobilize forces once again and confront the horror in room 5-5. Scary. You think like 5th floor, room 555? That's like not very satanic, is it? But hey, it could be. Maybe there's a basement. Oh no. Very scary. Very interested in what could be edging on dark academia versus slasher. I don't know. Very interesting though. I love the cover. I like the cover of this one too, but I had expected more for some reason. Dead But Dreaming of Electric Sheep by Paul Tremblay. I'm instantly interested because I do like Paul Tremblay's work. It's got a very weirdly rendered eyeball. It has kind of like a futuristic chrome. It's using a lot of pinks and blues, like colors of reflected chrome. It's a very green eye that almost looks reminiscent of a camera shutter. Very stark white sans serif font for Dead But Dreaming of Electric Sheep. And of course that title is a play on Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick. That novel, very, very influential, not only in all science fiction, futurist works, and of course cyberpunk. Meet Julia Flang, a 20-something former semi-professional gamer living with her retired uncle and working 2 jobs she doesn't like. Out of the blue, her estranged mother, a CFO for one of the world's largest tech companies, offers her a temp job with a payday that Julia can't refuse. One sham interview later, she's offered the job to chaperone a man in a vegetative state, one with proprietary AI implanted in his head from California to the East Coast. Meet a middle-aged man who wakes within a disorienting hellscape filled with monstrous grotesqueries. Worse than the fluid, morphing reality in which he's trapped, he has no memory of who he is. He certainly doesn't remember getting the rabbit tattoo on his arm. He only knows that he must find a certain person who he can't remember. Julia fumblingly navigates the man that she calls Bernie from the company campus and onto planes and through one of the largest airports in America. As their 2 lives intertwine, Julie and Bernie become unlikely allies and fugitives on a collision course with reality. There's a lot more to that description, the summary, so seek it out. I'm very interested because it's Paul Tremblay. I'm very interested because it's scary. The whole idea is very scary to me, and I'd like to see how much of it is from Bernie's point of view. Yeah, absolutely lovely. So yeah, that is stuff that I found coming out for June 2026 that interested me very, very much. There will be another video coming out for all the stuff that I liked that's coming out in July. Now, like I said, there wasn't a whole lot of those books, which is good because it saves me a bit of time. This video would have been like an hour if I had done them all together, and I'm gonna take a little break. I have taken a little break. As mentioned previously, our dog passed away, Toki. He was one of our 2 Shiba Inu dogs. Reese passed away quite a while ago during the pandemic, and that was really hard, but we had Toki here to sort of displace a lot of that grief somewhat because Reese was a super special pup too. But yeah, with no dog in the house, it's extremely hard. And after Reese's passing, I really poured a lot of extra love into Toki. He was already very old. He was alone. He didn't have his sister who had taught him how to be a dog. And he was just an awkward little dog. So yeah, it's very, very hard not having him here. And I took a month off. I thought I'd come back in a couple weeks and kind of force my way through at least one video, the June new horror releases video, and I didn't. I thought it would be late, and it's not. It's a whole month late. But here we are. I was able to do that. I took a nice week off home visiting family and friends, and most importantly, a whole bunch of dogs. Like my friends and family have a lot of dogs, so I got to pet a whole bunch of dogs, and that was really helpful. So of course, I still miss my dog so very much, like every day. And yeah, so there won't be any really cute pictures of dogs to be had, unfortunately. We may take a long break, if ever, from having a pet again. So yeah, thank you to everybody who reached out. I did post some pictures on Instagram and Facebook, and I put a small note just alluding to some family issues at the time here on YouTube because I didn't want to get too personal in all the personal spaces. But yeah, if you're interested in seeing what a cute goddamn dog he was, you can go and look on my Instagram where I have quite a few photos. I'm going to be putting up a few photos of him around here, so maybe there will be a little one just somewhere on the shelves. So that explains where I've been for the month of May. If you've listened this far in, thank you so much for watching. And of course, thank you for all your support through this time. And if you, like I said, reached out while I was posting pictures of my dog, an extremely sad, well, thank you for your sympathy during that dark and what continues to be a really dark time without my pup. But thank you again for watching, and make sure that you have an ooky, spooky day. And hug your dog.